The crumpled divorce papers lay between us like a shattered promise, their edges cutting into my heart with the precision of 1,000 betrayals. His eyes, once a serene ocean of whispered dreams, now mirrored the storm of 1,000 unspoken apologies, but I refused to drown in them. I could feel the wheelchair's cold metal beneath my hands, a reminder of the battles I had fought, the wars I had waged for love, our love. "You're leaving me for her?" My voice was a fragile thread, woven with disbelief and defiance. He didn't meet my gaze, his silence a deafening roar. The room, once filled with laughter and shared secrets, now echoed with the ghostly whispers of abandoned memories. I glanced at the papers again, the ink smudged by tears I refused to shed. Tears were the currency of my past. I would not pay him with my pain. As I stared at them, a strange resolve began to unfurl within me, like the first bloom of spring breaking through the frost. I looked down at my legs, dormant and still for years, yet in that moment they felt alive, vibrant, as if infused with the energy of every heartbreak and every victory. "I don't need you," I whispered, each word a carefully aimed dagger. Suddenly, inexplicably, I was standing. The wheelchair, once a prison, was now a relic of a past I was ready to bury. I caught his startled expression, the widening of his eyes, the way his lips parted in disbelief, and it spurred me on, fueled by the fire of newfound independence. His voice was a soft plea, a desperate grasp at something slipping away. "How?" But I had no answer for him. The truth was, I had always been stronger than he, or even I, had believed. Each step I took away from him was a reclamation of self, an unspoken vow to never again be caged by someone else's choices. Yet, as I reached the door, a flicker of memory stopped me. A promise we had made, beneath cherry blossoms, their petals falling like gentle rain. "No matter what happens, we'll face it together." It was a promise he'd broken, but it was a promise I intended to keep in my own way. I turned to him, a phoenix rising from ashes, my heart a fortress rebuilt from ruins. "This isn't the end," I said, my voice carrying the weight of 1,000 new beginnings. "This is my beginning." As I left, the world outside was a kaleidoscope of possibilities, each more vibrant than the last. For the first time in years, I felt the warmth of the sun, not just on my skin, but deep within, illuminating paths I had long forgotten. The city hummed with life, a symphony of potential that matched the tempo of my heart. Days turned into weeks, and I discovered the joy of solitude, the strength in standing alone. I enrolled in classes, learned languages, explored passions I had set aside in the shadow of our love. Every step I took was a step towards a future that was mine alone, untainted by the specter of betrayal. But life, with its penchant for irony, had one more twist to offer. It came in the form of a letter, slipped under my door, its edges worn and familiar. My name was scrawled across it in his handwriting, a ghost from the past I had tried to lay to rest. Curiosity, relentless and insistent, urged me to open it. Inside was a single note, simple yet profound. "I'm sorry. I was wrong." The words were like a stone cast into the still waters of my heart, rippling through the peace I had found. I set the letter aside, refusing to let it anchor me to the past. Forgiveness was a gift I had given myself, long before his apology arrived. Then came the unexpected. The double twist fate had hidden up its sleeve. Her, his returned FL, the woman who had been the catalyst for my liberation, stood at my door, her eyes a mirror of the pain I had once known. She spoke of deception, of lies spun by him to bind her to him, and a love she realized too late was a mirage. Together, we sat, two women bound by the threads of betrayal, weaving a new tapestry of strength and solidarity. In her, I found a kindred spirit, not a rival, but an ally in the pursuit of independence and self-worth. The journey of love, betrayal, and revenge had led me here, not to a place of bitterness, but to a place of understanding, of shared experiences and unexpected friendships. In the end, the greatest revenge was not in seeking to hurt, but in living fully, embracing every moment with an open heart. And as I looked towards the horizon, the city bathed in the soft glow of twilight, I knew that each tear, each memory, each broken promise had been a stepping stone to the woman I had become. Independent, unshackled, and ready for whatever lay ahead. My heart shattered like delicate porcelain as he placed the divorce papers before me, each page a silent scream echoing the betrayal that hung between us like a storm cloud refusing to break. His eyes, once a sanctuary, now bore the cold detachment of a stranger. The room, despite its warmth, felt like a vast expanse of ice, and I was drowning in its frozen depths. Why? The words slipped from my lips, barely a whisper, yet it held the weight of 1,000 unspoken questions. His silence was a dagger, twisting deeper with every passing second. For her, he finally spoke, his voice as hollow as the promises he'd once made. Her, the specter of a past love, now returned to reclaim what I thought was mine. I should have felt anger, rage even, but all that lingered was a profound emptiness, a void that threatened to consume me. I glanced down at my legs, useless for so long, bound by fate's cruel hand to this wheelchair. Yet, as his betrayal carved its mark into my soul, something stirred within me. A flicker of defiance, an ember of forgotten strength. I had been caged not just by my own body, but by the love that had blinded me to the truth. Now I was free. A laugh bubbled up, unexpected and raw, startling him. "Thank you," I said, my voice gaining strength with each word. The surprise in his eyes was a balm to my wounded heart. "Thank you for setting me free." As I spoke, I felt an unfamiliar sensation, a tingling warmth spreading through my legs. I stood, the wheelchair now nothing more than a relic of my past. His eyes widened in shock, a mirror to my own disbelief. I turned away from him, each step a testament to my rebirth. Memories flashed through my mind, the laughter, the whispered dreams, the promises that had bound us. But among them, new memories unfurled, vibrant and full of potential. I was more than the sum of our past. I was an endless horizon, stretching beyond the confines of his betrayal. As I walked, the tears that had threatened to fall turned to ash, replaced by a resolve as sharp as broken glass. I would not be defined by his choice, nor the shadow of her presence. I was my own, and for the first time I felt the power of that truth. The city buzzed around me, a symphony of life and possibility. I wandered through streets bathed in twilight, each step a defiance of the past that had sought to bind me. Yet, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of crimson and gold, I found myself standing before a familiar door. It swung open, revealing a face I'd long wished to forget, my former best friend and the harbinger of my betrayal. "Surprised?" she asked, her voice a poisonous melody. She had always been the sun to my moon, her light casting shadows on everything I held dear. "I knew you'd come." "Did you?" I replied, my voice steady, each word a carefully crafted weapon. "You took him, but you can't take me." Her laughter was a dagger, sharp and cutting. "I never wanted you. You were just collateral." The admission cut deeper than any blade, yet it was also a gift, a clarity that washed over me, cleansing the remnants of my naivety. I realized then that revenge was not the answer. True independence lay in the ability to walk away, to rebuild and thrive beyond the ruins of what once was. "Keep him," I said, turning away from the venom of her words. "I have no need for ghosts." As I walked away, the air around me seemed to shimmer with possibilities. My legs were steady, my heart a phoenix rising from the ashes of love and betrayal. I moved forward, not out of spite, but out of an unyielding desire to embrace the future that awaited me. In the days that followed, I immersed myself in the world I had neglected. I painted, each stroke a testament to my newfound freedom. I laughed with friends, genuine and unburdened by the shadows of my past. I rediscovered the joy of my own company, the quiet strength that had lain dormant, waiting for the right moment to awaken. And then, one crisp autumn morning, as the leaves danced their final waltz to the ground, I met him. He was not like the others. He saw me, truly saw me, and in his gaze, I found a reflection of the woman I had become, independent, resilient, and gloriously whole. His presence was a gentle reminder that love could be a sanctuary, not a shackle. With him, There were no promises of forever, just a shared understanding of the here and now. Together, we walked a path untainted by the ghosts of the past, each step a promise to ourselves, not to each other. As I stood at the edge of the world I had reclaimed, I realized that I had not just regained my independence. I had discovered the boundless strength of my own spirit. Betrayal had been my awakening, and in its wake, I had found the courage to truly live. The world shattered in the space of a heartbeat. His eyes, once warm with promises of forever, were now cold as he slid the divorce papers across the table. My fingers trembled, tracing the edges of the document, a silent witness to the betrayal. Each word blurred with unshed tears, a mocking testament to the love that once was. I felt the weight of my heart, a leaden stone sinking into an abyss of disbelief. Why? The question slipped past my lips, a whisper lost in the chasm that had opened between us. For her, he replied, a single pronoun carrying the weight of his confession. Her. The specter of his past, a shadow I had lived in unknowingly. Memories flashed like lightning in the storm of my mind. Our laughter, whispered secrets under the stars, the promise of a future woven in gentle touches and shared dreams. Now, each memory was a shard, cutting deeper, demanding to be felt. Yet, amidst the wreckage, a spark ignited. A realization that the chains of my dependence were only as strong as my belief in them. I had been sitting in this wheelchair, confined by circumstance, but not by choice. His betrayal was a catalyst, a brutal clarity that I was more than the sum of my broken dreams. I stood, the act defying not just gravity, but the expectations that had bound me. His eyes widened, a mix of shock and something else. Regret? I couldn't tell. The room spun, but I remained upright, fueled by a fierce determination that burned brighter than any hurt. My voice, steady and resolute, cut through the silence. Thank you, I said, each syllable a declaration of my rebirth, for reminding me of who I am. The divorce papers remained on the table, a relic of a chapter now closed. I turned away, feeling the weight of my own footsteps for the first time in what felt like eternity. Outside, the world was vibrant, alive, a stark contrast to the desolation I had left behind. I walked, each step a testament to my independence, each breath a promise to myself. The air was crisp, invigorating, filling my lungs with possibilities. As I wandered, the city unfolded, a tapestry of life and stories. I was no longer a passive observer, but a part of its vibrant weave, each thread a new beginning. I found myself at a small park, the sun casting playful shadows, a dance of light and dark that mirrored my own journey. A bench beckoned, and I sat, allowing the world to wash over me. A pair of children played nearby, their laughter a balm to my wounded heart. I watched, a smile tugging at my lips, the sensation both foreign and welcome. In the distance, a familiar figure approached. It was him, the architect of my newfound freedom. His arrival was unexpected, a twist in the narrative I hadn't anticipated. He stopped, a respectful distance away, uncertainty etched on his features. I didn't expect to see you here, he said, his voice softer, lacking the edge of our last encounter. Nor I you, I replied, meeting his gaze with steady resolve. He hesitated, as if weighing his words. I wanted to apologize. I handled things poorly. His admission was unexpected, a crack in the facade of his certainty. Yet it was not the balm I needed. I had found my own path, and it diverged from his. I appreciate that, I said, my tone gentle yet firm. But I've moved on. He nodded, acceptance in the slight bow of his head. I wish you the best. And you, I replied, meaning it. As he walked away, a weight lifted. I was free, unbound by past grievances, ready to embrace whatever lay ahead. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky with hues of hope and renewal. I rose, feeling the solid ground beneath my feet, a reminder of my strength. The night was young, and so was I, reborn in the crucible of heartbreak and resilience. With a light heart, I turned towards home, each step an echo of independence. And as I walked, I made a vow to myself, a promise to cherish this newfound freedom, to forge a future on my own terms, untethered by the past. In that moment, I knew I was enough. The divorce papers lay on the table like a ghost from a past life, haunting in their finality, ink still glistening with the cold sheen of betrayal. I felt a surge inside me, a torrent of emotions that I could barely contain. My heart ached, but it wasn't the ache of loss or sadness. It was the ache of liberation. I looked up at him, my husband, the man who once claimed to love me, now a stranger with a silent plea in his eyes. "Sign them," he said, his voice barely a whisper, as if afraid of the words themselves. I stared at the papers again, and then, unexpected even to myself, laughter bubbled up from within me. A sound that was foreign, almost startling in its brightness. It echoed in the room, filling the space between us with its strange, unfamiliar melody. His eyes widened, confusion etched into his features. "Why are you laughing?" he asked, a hint of desperation creeping into his tone. I looked at him, really looked, and saw the boy I once loved, the man who had promised me forever. But those were just memories now, faded photographs in an album that no longer held any meaning. "Because," I said, my voice steady, "I finally understand what you are." His confusion shifted to anger, a predictable mask that he wore so well. "You don't understand anything," he snapped, turning away as if to shield himself from something he couldn't quite grasp. But I did understand, more than I ever had before. The wheelchair beside me creaked slightly as I rose, not with the hesitant, fearful movements of a broken woman, but with the confident grace of someone who had finally found her feet, literally and metaphorically. He hadn't noticed, too wrapped up in his own world, to see that I had been standing, walking, for weeks now. I hadn't told him. I wanted to keep that part for myself, a small rebellion, a taste of independence that was mine alone. His shock was palpable when he turned back, eyes widening in disbelief when he saw me upright, standing tall. You can walk?" he stammered, stepping back as if the ground beneath him had shifted. I nodded, a small, triumphant smile playing on my lips. "Yes, and I've been walking out of your shadow for a while now." He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came. It was a moment of clarity, a break in the clouds that revealed the truth I had known all along, but had been too afraid to acknowledge. I had been living in the past, chained by promises that were never meant to be kept. But now, as I stood there, the weight of those chains fell away, and I was free. I reached for the papers, my hand steady, and signed them with a flourish. The pen moved across the page with a finality that was both terrifying and exhilarating. As I did, memories flooded back. Our first kiss under the cherry blossoms, the whispered promises under a sky full of stars, the night spent dreaming of a future that was never ours to have. Each memory was a tear, falling silently, but none of them reached my eyes. They were tears that belonged to another time, another me. He watched me, his expression a mix of anger and something else, regret maybe. But it didn't matter anymore. I placed the pen down, the metal clicking against the table, and turned to leave. "Wait," he called, a last, desperate attempt to hold on to something that had already slipped through his fingers. I paused, my hand on the door, and looked back. "Thank you," I said softly. "For what?" he asked, genuine confusion in his voice. "For teaching me how to stand on my own," I replied. And with that, I stepped through the door, leaving behind a life that was never truly mine. Outside, the world seemed different, brighter somehow, as if seeing it for the first time. The air was crisp, carrying with it the scent of autumn leaves and new beginnings. I walked, each step a promise to myself, a promise of freedom, of self-discovery. And then, just as I thought my story had reached its conclusion, a familiar figure appeared before me. She stood there, the woman he had left me for, her presence a reminder of the past, but also a symbol of my future. Her eyes met mine, and I saw in them a reflection of my own journey, a journey of love, betrayal, and ultimately, independence. "Why?" she asked, her voice trembling. I met her gaze, unflinching. "Because I chose myself," I replied, the words resonating with a truth that was undeniable. She nodded, understanding passing between us, a silent acknowledgement of the paths we had both walked. And in that moment, I realized that revenge was not in bitterness or anger, but in the strength to move forward, to reclaim the life that was always meant to be mine. As I walked away, the tears began to fall, not of sorrow, but of release, of rebirth. Each tear a memory, a promise to myself that I would never again be bound by the chains of someone else's dreams. And with each step, I felt the world open before me, vast and full of possibilities. This was my story, my life, and I was finally ready to live it. The room felt like an eternity wrapped in silence, the kind that presses hard against your chest until breathing becomes an act of defiance. My eyes, wide and unblinking, were fixed on the papers he had laid out before me. A divorce file, the ink on its pages like rivers of betrayal. The words blurred, and I wondered if my tears were to blame, or if it was the weight of promises now shattered. "Say something, Ayumi," he urged, his voice a mere whisper, a ghost lost in the echoes of memories we once shared. His eyes, the ones I had fallen for, the ones that promised me forever, now held only the reflection of her. The woman who had returned to reclaim what she believed was hers, the woman I never thought would have the power to dismantle my world. I felt the chill of the wheelchair beneath me, a reminder of battles fought, of strength regained. My legs, once paralyzed by fate and fear, now tingled with a life I had almost forgotten. It was as if his betrayal had set something free within me, something fierce and unyielding. "You want me to crumble, Ryu?" I asked, my voice steady, defying the tremor in my heart. "Do you think I'll break, just because you couldn't keep your promises?" He flinched, and for a moment, I saw the boy I had loved, vulnerable and conflicted. But that moment faded, swallowed by the shadow of the man who stood before me, a man who had chosen to let go. "I never meant to hurt you," he began, but the words felt hollow, like an echo in an empty room. His eyes darted away, unable to meet the fire in mine. "You did," I replied, letting the truth cut through the air like a blade. "But I won't let you destroy me." With a resolve I hadn't known I possessed, I pushed myself to stand, feeling the strength in my legs, the independence I had fought for. The wheelchair clattered behind me, a symbol of the past I was ready to leave behind. Ryu's eyes widened, disbelief mingling with awe. "Ayumi, your legs." I took a step forward, each movement a declaration of my resilience. "I will not be the girl who waits for someone to save her, not anymore." The room seemed to shift, the weight of our history tilting on a new axis. Memories flashed, our laughter under cherry blossoms, whispered dreams beneath the stars. They were now ghosts, haunting the space between us. Ryu stepped back, his expression a mix of regret and something else. Admiration, perhaps? "I never realized how strong you are." I smiled, a bittersweet curve of my lips. "Maybe that's because you never truly saw me." The air was thick with unsaid words, yet I felt lighter, unburdened by the chains of a love that had turned to ashes. I picked up the divorce papers, folding them with care, as if they were relics of a life I was ready to leave behind. "You'll be happy with her," I said, not as a blessing, but as a truth I needed to speak. "And I'll find my happiness too." He nodded, the sadness in his eyes now mingled with acceptance. "I'm sorry, Ayumi." I nodded, a silent acknowledgement of what once was. Turning away from him, I felt the future unfurling before me, a canvas waiting for new stories, new beginnings. As I left the room, the echoes of our lives together faded into the distance. The corridor stretched out, a path lined with the light of possibilities. My steps were steady, my heart a tumultuous sea of emotions, yet I was unafraid. I had found my strength, my independence, and nothing, not even betrayal, could take that from me. But as I walked away, the walls whispered secrets, secrets that promised twists I had yet to uncover. There was more to her return, more to Ryu's choice than he had let on. The shadows held truths I would soon discover, truths that would turn my newfound independence into a journey of unexpected alliances and revelations. I paused at the threshold, a chill dancing down my spine. The past, it seemed, was not yet done with me. and as I stepped into the unknown, I knew the story was far from over. The moment the papers hit the table, my world shattered like fragile glass. His eyes, once filled with promises of forever, were now cold, calculating, as if I were just another transaction he had to complete. My heart raced, pounding against the confines of my chest, not with the expected anguish, but with an inexplicable surge of freedom. I looked down at the crisp, white pages, the words "divorce agreement" stamped at the top in bold, unyielding letters, the ink still wet from its journey through the legal machinations of our shared life. I could feel the tears well up, an ocean of memories threatening to drown me, but I swallowed them back. Not now, not yet. "You're leaving me for her," I said, my voice surprisingly steady, echoing in the vast emptiness of our once shared sanctuary. He flinched, a momentary flicker of guilt crossing his features, but it was quickly replaced by a hardened resolve. "I never meant for it to happen," he replied, as if that could justify the knife he had planted in my back. She came back into my life, and everything changed. Ah, the returned first love, the one who held his heart before I ever did. The specter of her presence had always lingered in our marriage, a shadow I could never quite escape, but now she was no longer a ghost. She was flesh and blood, claiming what she believed was hers. I felt a sudden clarity wash over me, a strange sense of calm settling in my bones. I had been a prisoner in this wheelchair for months, trapped not just by my physical limitations, but by the chains of our crumbling relationship. I realized then that perhaps this was my liberation, disguised as betrayal. "Thank you," I said, surprising even myself with the genuine gratitude in my tone. He blinked, confusion clouding his features. "What do you mean, thank you?" he asked, his voice tinged with disbelief. "For setting me free," I replied, feeling the weight of years lift from my shoulders. "For giving me a chance to find myself." I pushed the papers back across the table, a silent acceptance of this new chapter. The room grew still, the only sound the rustle of the leaves outside, whispering secrets to the wind. I wheeled myself away from the table, away from the life we had built together. The room seemed to expand, the walls breathing with possibilities I had never dared imagine. Each turn of the wheels felt like a step towards something greater, something that was mine alone. As I reached the door, I paused, turning back to face him one last time. "I hope you find what you're looking for," I said, and it wasn't a lie. He nodded, a silent acknowledgement of our shared past, our diverging futures. Once outside, I took a deep breath, the air crisp and invigorating against my skin. I could feel the tears threatening again, but this time, they were tears of release, of letting go. The world seemed brighter, the colors sharper, as if I were seeing it all for the first time. I made my way down the path, each turn of the wheels a testament to my newfound independence. Memories of our life together flitted through my mind, but they no longer held the power they once did. They were just pieces of a puzzle that no longer fit, remnants of a story that had reached its conclusion. As I reached the end of the path, I saw her, standing there, waiting. The woman who had taken my place, the catalyst for this transformation. Her eyes met mine, a mixture of triumph and apology in her gaze. I nodded to her, a silent acknowledgement of her role in my rebirth. "Take care of him," I said, my voice carrying on the breeze. She nodded, a promise unspoken as I turned away, leaving them both behind. With each push of the wheels, I felt lighter, unburdened by the weight of a love that had become a cage. I was free, and the world stretched out before me, a canvas waiting for my touch. But as I moved forward, a sudden jolt of pain shot through my legs, unexpected and electrifying. I gasped, my hands freezing on the wheels. It was a sensation I hadn't felt in months, a spark of life in limbs that had lain dormant, forgotten. Could it be? I hesitated, disbelief warring with hope. I took a deep breath, willing myself to try the impossible. I closed my eyes, focusing on the sensation, willing it to bloom into something more. Another jolt, stronger this time, a promise of movement, of strength. I reached down, my fingers trembling with anticipation, and pushed against the chair. The world seemed to hold its breath, the air thick with expectation. And then, like a miracle, I stood. The tears came then, unbidden and unstoppable, but they were tears of triumph, of a promise fulfilled. I was standing on my own 2 feet, the world at my fingertips. With a determined step, I walked away from the past, each stride a testament to my resilience, my rebirth. I was no longer the woman trapped by love, by betrayal. I was something new, something stronger. I was free. The cold, sterile paper, screaming with legal jargon and the weight of broken vows, lay in front of me like an unwanted specter. My fingers trembled as I traced the bold letters spelling out divorce agreement, a silent declaration of our fractured love. My heart, once a symphony of hope and dreams, now thudded dully in my chest, echoing the hollow void his absence left behind. I stared at the ink-stained pages, each word a dagger, cutting deeper into the fabric of my carefully woven life. This contract, this betrayal, was the crescendo of countless whispered promises that had slipped through his lips on moonlit nights, promises now shattered by her return. She, the phantom of his past, had re-emerged, claiming the pieces of him I thought were mine. A laugh bubbled up, unbidden and tinged with madness, startling in the quiet room. It was absurd, this situation, the irony not lost on me. The man who had vowed to cherish me in sickness and in health now handed me my liberation, but I was no longer the woman he had once loved. I was a specter reborn from the ashes of his betrayal. I pushed back my wheelchair, the screech of its metal echoing the protest in my heart. I had been trapped here, ensnared not just by my injury, but by the invisible chains of love and loyalty. Now, as I stood, a defiant act of reclamation, I realized that the true prison had never been these wheels, but the lie of our love. His eyes widened, a flicker of something, shock, regret, guilt, quickly masked by his stoic facade. "You can walk," he whispered, the first words he'd spoken since handing me the file. I met his gaze, unflinching. "I can," I replied, my voice steady, belying the storm raging within. "And I will walk away from this, from you." For so long, I had been the ghost in my own life, haunting the edges of our shared existence. His betrayal was a catalyst, igniting the dormant strength within me. And yet, as I turned away, a part of me still longed to understand. Why her? Why now, after everything? The memories flooded back, each a vivid tableau of our life together. The laughter, the shared dreams, the quiet moments of understanding that needed no words. But also the subtle shifts, the growing distance, the unspoken tensions that I had brushed aside, too enamored with the idea of us to see the cracks forming beneath the surface. I paused at the doorway, casting one last glance at the man I had loved, the man who had become a stranger. "I hope she was worth it," I said, the words a final severing of the ties that had bound us. His silence was answer enough. As I stepped into the sunlight, the warmth embraced me, whispering promises of new beginnings. But shadows lingered, memories that clung like cobwebs, refusing to let go. And in that moment, I realized that independence was not just the absence of chains, but the presence of self. Days turned into weeks, and I found solace in the rhythm of my new life. I reclaimed my identity, one small victory at a time. I learned to dance in the rain, to find joy in solitude, to trust the whispers of my heart. But the specter of betrayal was never far, lurking at the edges of my consciousness, a reminder of what had been lost. It was on one of those days, amidst the mundane routine of a life rebuilt, that the unexpected happened. A letter arrived, its envelope crisp and unassuming, yet bearing the familiar scrawl of the man who had once been my world. I hesitated, the past and present colliding in a moment of indecision. But curiosity, that insistent whisper, urged me to open it. The words inside were a confession, a revelation, a plea for understanding that left me reeling. She had returned, yes, but not for the reasons I had imagined. Her presence was not the cause of our downfall, but a symptom of it. His heart, torn between duty and desire, had made a choice, not of another woman, but of himself. In the end, it was not love that had failed, but the illusions we had built around it. I sat there, the letter a tangible weight in my hands, and for the first time, tears flowed freely. Not for him, not for the life we had lost, but for the woman I had been, the woman who had loved fiercely, who had dreamed with abandon, and for the woman I was becoming, forged anew in the fires of betrayal and rebirth. The journey was not over. It had only just begun. I would carry the scars, yes, but they were reminders of my strength, my resilience, my capacity to love and to let go. And as I folded the letter, placing it gently in a drawer, I made a promise to myself, a promise of hope, of healing, of a future unburdened by the past. For in the end, my story was not about him or her or the shadows that lingered. It was about me, finding my voice amidst the silence, my light in the darkness, my path in the labyrinth of life. And with that realization came a profound sense of peace, a quiet certainty that I was enough, that I had always been enough. And so I stepped forward into the unknown, the world a canvas of endless possibilities, my heart a compass guiding me toward the horizon. The world shattered in the split second it took for his words to reach me, jagged syllables cutting through the air, through me. "I'm sorry. She's back. This is for the best," he said, his voice a muted echo of the man I once loved. In his hands, the divorce file was a stark, unyielding reality, a reality I was meant to accept with grace, but I could only feel the ice-cold metal of my wheelchair, the one place I thought I'd never rise from, lock me in place. The room seemed to close in around us, the walls a silent witness to the play of betrayal unfolding within them. His eyes, once filled with warmth, now held a distant chill, a stranger's gaze. The woman he spoke of, the ghost who had returned to claim her place, haunted the space between us. She was a specter of his past, a shadow I had never anticipated would emerge from the recesses of his heart. I looked down at the papers, their crisp edges almost mocking the tears that threatened to spill over, the ink blurring under the weight of my disbelief. Memories cascaded through my mind, a torrent of moments we had shared, promises whispered under moonlit skies, dreams spun with the golden thread of love. Each memory was a dagger, twisting deeper with the realization that they were nothing but fragile illusions now. But then, something unexpected surged within me, a spark of rebellion against the chains of despair. The irony of it all lingered in the air, a bitter tang on my tongue. Here I was, left with nothing but a paper trail of broken vows, and yet I stood. Without thinking, I pushed myself up from the wheelchair, the act as defiant as it was miraculous. It was as if independence had been lying dormant within me, waiting for the right moment to unfurl its wings. His eyes widened, a flash of genuine surprise cutting through his carefully constructed facade. For a heartbeat, I saw a glimmer of the man he once was. But it was gone as quickly as it had come, replaced by a mask of indifference. "You're standing," he murmured, his voice betraying a hint of awe, a crack in his armor. "Yes," I replied, my voice steady, though my heart pounded like a war drum. "I am." The words were simple, yet they carried the weight of 1,000 unshed tears, a promise to myself that I would not crumble in the face of his betrayal. The room seemed to breathe with me, the walls expanding as if in acknowledgement of my newfound resolve. I took a step forward, then another, the sensation of movement a heady mix of freedom and fear. Each step was a testament to my strength, a defiance against the narrative he had written for me. He took a step back, the divorce file slipping from his grasp, forgotten on the floor. And in that moment, I realized that though he had left me broken, he had inadvertently gifted me something far greater, a chance to reclaim myself, to rediscover the woman I was meant to be. But even as I tasted the bittersweet flavor of independence, another truth lurked beneath the surface, waiting to unveil itself. His betrayal had not just severed our bond, it had opened my eyes to the complexities of love and loyalty. I had been blind to the signs, to the cracks that had formed in the foundation of our relationship. The return of his first love was merely the final blow, not the first. I turned away from him, my mind a whirlwind of thoughts and emotions. The future stretched out before me, an uncharted expanse of uncertainty and potential. I had a choice now, a choice to forge my own path, to write my own story. And as I took another step, I made a silent promise to myself. I would not let this betrayal define me. I would rise from the ashes of our love, stronger and more determined than ever. Yet, as I stepped into the cool embrace of the evening, the city lights flickering like distant stars, a new revelation struck me, a double twist in the tale I had not seen coming. The return of his past love was not the ending, but the beginning of a new chapter, not just for him, but for me as well. A chapter I would write with my own hand, penning each line with the ink of my resilience. And so, I walked into the night, leaving behind the shadows of yesterday, ready to embrace whatever tomorrow might bring. My world shattered silently, the echoes of his footsteps fading into the hollow abyss of our once shared dreams. The divorce papers lay on the table, their presence as cold and unforgiving as the winter wind that howled beyond the windows. The ink, still fresh, bled like the wounds in my heart. I stared at them, unblinking, as if they were a specter come to haunt the remnants of what I thought was love. Tears threatened, but I swallowed them back, each one a bitter reminder of promises whispered in the moonlit nights we used to cherish. Promises now broken, scattered like autumn leaves across a barren path. My fingers trembled as they traced his signature, the curves and edges of the letters a cruel mockery of the tenderness he once showed me. "I thought you loved me," I whispered to the emptiness, my voice barely audible over the roaring storm within. His love had been a sanctuary, a warm cocoon that shielded me from the harsh realities of the world. But now, that sanctuary crumbled, leaving me exposed and vulnerable, the chill of betrayal seeping into my bones. Yet, amidst the ruin, a spark flickered, a defiant ember of strength I hadn't realized lay dormant within me. I pushed the wheelchair aside, its wheels creaking in protest as if reluctant to relinquish their hold. I stood, the ground beneath my feet firm and unyielding, unlike the fragile foundations of my marriage. It was a small victory, but a victory nonetheless, as I embraced this newfound independence with a resolve that surprised even myself. His betrayal, a wound still raw, would not define me. I would not be the victim of his choices, nor the ghost of his past. I would rise, stronger and unbroken, the chains of dependence cast aside like the shadows of a forgotten dusk. The world lay before me, vast and daunting, but also filled with untold possibilities. With each step, memories flooded my mind, our laughter, our shared dreams, and the quiet comfort of his presence. But those memories now belonged to another time, another life. I was no longer the girl who waited for him to return, but the woman who would forge her own path, unshackled by the weight of his betrayal. As I reached the door, I paused, the divorce papers still clutched in my hand. They were a symbol of the end, but also the beginning of something new. I turned, my gaze lingering on the room that had once been filled with love and joy. It was now just a room, its warmth gone, leaving only the echoes of what once was. I stepped into the world, the cold air a sharp contrast to the fire burning within my chest. I was free yet alone, a paradox I would learn to navigate. Each breath I took was a declaration, a promise to myself that I would not be broken. I would rise, and I would live, not for him, but for me. The journey ahead was uncertain, the path uncharted. But I walked it with determination, each step a testament to my resilience. I would not be defined by his betrayal, nor by the love that had turned to ash. Instead, I would forge my own destiny, unburdened by the ghosts of my past. In the days that followed, I discovered strength in solitude, a quiet power in the silence of my own company. I found joy in small victories, in the simple act of choosing my own path. And as I embraced this new chapter of my life, I realized that the greatest love I could ever know was the love I had for myself. But life, with all its twists and turns, had not finished with me yet. It was on a day like any other, when the sun hung low in the sky, painting the world in hues of gold and crimson, that I saw him again. Not the man who had betrayed me, but another. A stranger with eyes that held stories untold and promises unspoken. He was a shadow at first, a fleeting figure in the periphery of my life. Yet, as our paths crossed, a connection sparked, electric and undeniable. He was different, his presence a balm to the wounds I thought would never heal. In his gaze, I saw not pity, but respect, not regret, but hope. We spoke, our conversations a dance of words and laughter, of shared dreams and whispered secrets. And in those moments, I felt the stirrings of something I had thought lost forever. A chance at love, not as a refuge, but as a partner, an equal. It was terrifying, exhilarating, and profoundly beautiful. I was no longer the girl who waited, nor the woman who walked alone. I was both and neither, a new creation forged from the fires of betrayal and the promise of new beginnings. With him, I found a new kind of love, one that did not seek to bind or control, but to uplift and celebrate. It was love without chains, without the shadows of the past. It was love that allowed me to be free, to stand tall and unbroken, even as the world shifted beneath my feet. And in that love, I found myself again, whole and unburdened, ready to embrace whatever the future held. For I was no longer defined by the betrayal that had once shattered my world. I was defined by the strength I found within, the courage to rise, and the wisdom to love again, not despite the past, but because of it. The weight of the divorce papers pressed against my hands like a silent scream. Each page whispered betrayal. Each signature line beckoned me to release a part of my soul. The ink bled over my heart, staining the remnants of what once was. I glanced at him. His eyes, once a sanctuary, now a storm. I had been bracing for this tempest, yet I never imagined it would come wrapped in the guise of her, the specter from our past. "Naomi," he said, his voice a mere shadow of its former warmth. "I'm sorry." Sorry. A word so fragile, it shattered against the walls of my heart, leaving behind shards of broken promises. I let out a breath I didn't realize I was holding, and with it, released the chains that had bound me to a love that was no longer mine. It was then that I felt it, a tingling sensation, a tremor of life in my legs, a whisper from a part of me I had long since silenced. I hadn't expected my body to react, to rise. Yet, as if driven by some unseen force, I stood up from the wheelchair, defying both expectation and gravity. His eyes widened, a mixture of shock and disbelief. "Naomi, you're—" "Yes," I interrupted, my voice steady, a newfound strength coursing through me. "I am." Independence surged in my veins, a river breaking through a dam. I was no longer the woman who needed him to stand, to walk, to live. I was my own salvation. The door creaked open before I could say more, and there she was, Miyu. Her presence was a haunting melody, a ghostly echo of what had once been. She had returned, and with her, the memories I had tried so hard to bury. "Naomi," Miyu greeted, her voice like a siren's song, luring and dangerous. "I didn't expect to see you like this." Her gaze flickered to my legs, standing firm beneath me, and then back to my face, searching, assessing. I met her eyes with an intensity I hadn't known I possessed. A silent battle of wills waged between us. In that moment, I realized this was not just about a man or love lost. It was about reclaiming myself from the shadows of our shared past. "I didn't expect to be like this," I replied, my tone sharp as a blade, yet laced with an undercurrent of triumph. "But life is full of surprises, isn't it?" A fleeting flicker of something akin to admiration crossed her face, but it was gone as quickly as it had appeared, replaced by the familiar mask of cool detachment. She turned to him, her presence commanding, magnetic. The air between them crackled with an unspoken history, a bond that seemed unbreakable. But I had learned that appearances could be deceiving. I had lived through illusions and emerged on the other side, raw and real. He glanced between us, caught in the crossfire of past and present. "I didn't want it to end like this," he said, his voice laced with regret, a man torn between duty and desire. "It ended the moment you chose her," I replied, my words a finality, a punctuation mark on a chapter that had long since closed. Miyu's laughter, soft and melodious, filled the room. "Oh, Naomi," she said, her tone almost sympathetic. "Do you really believe it was that simple?" Her words hung heavily, a riddle wrapped in darkness. Something in her gaze, a flickering flame of mischief, hinted at secrets untold. My curiosity sparked, a moth drawn to the flame. "What are you saying?" I asked, the words tumbling out, a challenge and a plea all at once. She stepped closer, her eyes alight with a dangerous spark. "I didn't come back for him," she confessed, her voice barely above a whisper, yet it echoed in the cavern of my heart. "I came back for you." The world tilted, a dizzying spiral of confusion and revelation. "For me?" Her words lingered, a tantalizing promise wrapped in mystery. In that moment, the lines between ally and adversary blurred, and I found myself questioning everything I thought I knew. "Why?" I asked, the question a fragile thread, pulling at the tapestry of our history. "Because," she said, a smile playing on her lips, "I know what you're capable of, and together we could change everything." Her offer hung between us, a bridge over turbulent waters. I glanced at him, the man who had been my everything, now a mere player in a game far larger than us. His eyes held a plea, a longing for things to remain as they were, to cling to the familiar, the safe. But safety was an illusion, a gilded cage I had no desire to remain in. I turned back to Miyu, a decision solidifying in my core. She extended a hand, a gesture of partnership, of equals standing on the precipice of the unknown. And as I took her hand, I realized that this was not an end, but a beginning. A chance to rewrite the story, to reclaim the narrative that had been stolen from me. A promise of liberation, of vengeance, of love, not for another, but for myself. Together, we would unravel the threads of fate and weave a new tapestry, one where I was not the victim, but the victor. And as the world shifted beneath our feet, I knew that whatever lay ahead, I would face it standing tall,